There's a number that quietly funds most people's houses, and almost nobody ever calculates it. It's the money you hand over on day one, the down payment, the closing costs. On a median American home today, that's about $98,700 gone in a single afternoon before you own a thing outright. Now here is what nobody tells you. If you never buy the house and you put that same $98,000 into the market instead and you leave it alone for 30 years at a plain 7%, it becomes $751,600. That's not the whole story. That single to bound, where to park the money you already had, is bigger than most people's industry. And Harth Logan stated, we're to run the real math, not a slogan. Not renting is throwing money away, not buying always wins. The actual 30-year ledger, side by side, to the dollar. And I promise the answer is more uncomfortable than either side wants it to be. Two people who are financially identical, same income, same city, same starting cash in the bank. The only difference is one signs a mortgage. We're going to be scrupulously fair, and 1 year signs a land because the fair version is the only version worth watching. Both of them spend exactly the same amount of money every single month. Every dollars go to a mortgage, property tax, maintenance, insurance. The renter's dollars go to rent. And then, crucially, whatever is left over gets invested. That last part is the rule everyone cheats on. So we're going to enforce it. If the buyer spends more in a given month, the renter invests the difference. If the renter ever spends more, the buyer invests the difference. Nobody gets to secretly spend less and incentively pocket it. Identical outflow every month for 30 years. The only question we're measuring is, where does the money end up? In a house or in a portfolio? This is exactly how the honest calculators do it. And it's the only way to answer the question without lying to yourself. Here are the numbers, and every one of them is current. The house, $429,300. That's the national median. The mortgage, a 30-year fixed at 6.55%, today's rate, 20% down, so $85,860 up front, plus 3% closing costs, which is another $12,879. That's the $98,739 we started with. The loan itself is $343,440. Principal and interest come to $2,182 a month, and that number never changes for 30 years. On top of that, the buyer pays property tax at 1.1% of the home's value every year, maintenance at 1% a year, and homeowner's insurance starting at $2,300 a year. Those three grow as the house grows. The renter pays $2,000 a month for the same kind of home, rising 3% a year with the market, plus a little renter's insurance. And the assumptions that decide everything. The house appreciates 4% a year. The market returns 7% a year. We'll come back to those two numbers because they are the whole ball game. But 7% for stocks is deliberately conservative. The long-run average is closer to 10. We're handicapping the renter on purpose to be fair to the house. 30 years. Let's run it. Day 1. The buyer writes the check. $98,739 leaves their account and becomes equity in a house, minus the closing costs, which just evaporate. If they had to sell the very next month, they'd pay a 6% selling costs, and they'd walk away with only about $60,000 in equity. So on day 1, the buyer is actually behind. That's the part the excitement of the keys hides from you. Then the grind. $2,182 a month to the bank, most of it interest in the early years. Over the full 30 years, the buyer pays $442,000 in interest alone, not principal, interest. Rent paid to a lender, the privilege of borrowing. Property tax adds up to $270,000 over the 30 years. Maintenance, the leaking roof, the water heater, the furnace, another $246,000. Insurance. And when they finally sell at year 30, the 6% selling cost takes $83,000 off the top. But here's the payoff. The house that cost $429,000, growing at 4% a year, is worth $1,392,000 after 30 years. Subtract the selling cost, and the buyer's net worth is $1,308,847. That's a real number, a paid-off house and over $1.3 million in equity. For most people, that would be the whole game. Except we have someone standing right next to them. The renter starts the same day, by investing the buyer's down payment. That $98,739 goes straight into the market. Not into a house, into an index fund on day one. Then, every month, the renter pays rent, starting at $2,000, rising to about $4,700 a month by year 30. And in every single month where the buyer's total housing cost is higher than the renter takes that difference and invests it too, automatically. That's the rule. And it turns out the buyer's cost is higher almost the entire time. A $1 million house is expensive to carry. The property tax and the maintenance scale up with the house's value, so even with a fixed mortgage payment, the buyer keeps spending more than the renter year after year. So the renter keeps investing the gap year after year. 30 years later, the renter has paid $1,142,000 in rent, a staggering number, the number that launches 1,000 lectures about throwing money away. And their portfolio is worth $1,745,275. Buyer, $1,308,847. The renter, $1,745,045. The renter is ahead by $436,428. And it's not close at the end because it was close at the start. The renter was ahead in month 1, and the buyer never caught up. Not in year 5, not in year 15, not in year 30. There is no crossover. The whole way, the renter is in front. Take a second with that, because it runs against everything you've been told. Here's the sentence you've heard your whole life. Renting is throwing money away. Let's test it. The renter, over 30 years, threw away $1,149,000. Rent, plus they did the Lopez nor Lori. Gone. Now, why just 20% laat je dus in sermented? They removed in 3 seasons for 146,000. But Rendon is with having oorzend toontable Roner Durans, nidusly thrown the Vrotendowers, men of Rient. It's the one way enter in the ancient 30 Herod end of the year dollars, end the 400 cents in Rady Versaint. The Waithurdert and Randins a strand and 8%. The homeowner and a rentry one coince. They made the oscication benefices clear resident. It is 400 thing and rented as being in Rittisen. Tisser Lars, that's all fest of the Flimvisist, the entered, visited, invested it. They 100% winteth, and then Binch was 4% oven percented to a turned round the vertal. At find the lines where this flips. So that the affair for T revised, there more 3 wan, versus no 100 to 1160 fence in an intercent. It is never if I stopped here, I'd be doing exacting than exactly for instance, Nuvitor Remmers, the one escent, and only 3 that mountains, and Rinter River went into and 36%. As, waits these past 13 in the Rand, for 100 Zermerst. Then Mimbion own Nietzsche Saclade River. The buyer pulls ahead by 162,000. The exact break-even is 5.58%. If you genuinely believe your house will grow faster than 5.5% a year, every year, for 30 years, buying wins. If not, renting does. The second lever is the market. We use 7%. If the market only returns 5%, the buyer wins by 220,000. If it returns 9, the renter wins by $1.5 million. The break-even is 5.78%. So the real question hiding underneath all of this is simply, do you think stocks will beat your house by more than about 2 points a year? History says yes, comfortably, but history is not a promise. The third lever is the rent itself, really the price-to-rent ratio in your city. At $2,000 a month against this house, renting wins. But if the equivalent rent were $2,400, the buyer wins by $205,000. The break-even rent is about $2,270 a month, a price-to-rent ratio of roughly 16. And this is the practical takeaway. In expensive coastal cities, where a house costs 25 times its annual rent, renting and investing wins in a landslide. In cheaper metros where a house costs 12 or 14 times annual rent, buying wins. The map decides more than the mortgage rate does, so the renter wins the math. But I'd be lying to you if I left it there, because the math has one enormous invisible assumption baked into it. It assumes the renter actually invests the difference every month, the down payment on day one and the gap every month for 30 years, without fail, without skimming, without touching it in a bad year. Almost nobody does this. In the real world, the renter's difference gets spent on a nicer car, a vacation, a slightly better life, and 30 years later, that renter has no house and no portfolio. That's the outcome the slogan is actually warning you about, even if it's warning you badly. A mortgage is ugly, expensive, illiquid, forced savings. And forced savings, for most human beings, beats optional savings that never happens. The house wins not because it's the better investment, it usually isn't, but because it's the investment you can't talk yourself out of at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday. So the honest answer is this: if you have the discipline of a machine, renting and investing, the difference will very likely make you richer. If you're a normal person with normal willpower, the house might be the only way you ever build the wealth at all. Both of those are true at the same time, and anyone who tells you only one of them is selling something. Before we close, two smaller arguments people throw at this, because they deserve honest answers. The first: but you write off the mortgage interest. For most people today, you don't. The standard deduction is now so high that the overwhelming majority of homeowners take it and never itemize a single dollar of mortgage interest. That famous write-off is real for a thin slice of high-balance, high-income buyers and invisible to everyone else. Don't buy a house for a deduction you'll never claim. The second is the one the spreadsheet can't price: flexibility. The renter can leave in 30 days. The homeowner to move has to sell and pay that 6% to do it. The renter can chase the job in another city, the raise, the opportunity, without a $200,000 anchor. That mobility has a real dollar value over a career, and it quietly lands on the renter's side of the ledger, even though no calculator ever writes it down. A house is a wonderful thing to own and a heavy thing to carry when your life wants to move. One last piece of honesty, because big numbers lie. $436,000 in 30 years is not $436,000 today. Inflation shrinks it. In today's money, the renter's edge is about $208,000. And as retirement income, the 4% rule, the renter's portfolio pays about $5,800 a month. The buyer, if they sold the house, about $4,360. A meaningful difference, not a life-changing one. Enough to matter, not enough to define you. So, your life, if you never buy a house, if you invest the difference with real discipline, you probably end up richer, more flexible, and less tied to one roof in one city. If you don't, you likely end up with nothing to show for 30 years of rent. The house isn't a trap, and renting isn't throwing money away. Those are both slogans, and the slogans are how people avoid doing the arithmetic. The truth is quieter. It's a bet on appreciation versus returns, priced by your city, and won or lost by your own behavior. Run your own numbers before you sign anything for 30 years. The ledger doesn't care what you were told, it only cares what you actually do. I'm going to keep the books, you keep yours.